All right, this is lesson 5.9 on powers of products and quotients. And so we've been learning a lot about exponents and multiplication and doing exponents and division. And now we're going to look at raising those products and quotients to powers. Just to remind you, the product is the answer in multiplication and the quotient is the answer in division. And we know that powers have to do with exponents. So let's look at the multiplication rule first. The rule says to raise a product to a power, raise each factor to the power. Let's look at this first example. The factors are 4 times 3, and we want to raise them to the 5th power. So we're going to raise each factor, 4 to the 5th power times 3 to the 5th power. Here's another example, x times y, and we want to raise it to the 3rd power. So we raise each one of them, x to the 3rd power times y to the 3rd power. Okay, so you say, all right, well, we know how to do that, but what do we do to finish it? So now we're going to look at simplifying it. We have 4x squared raised to the 3rd power. So I separated them, and I raised 4 to the 3rd power, and then I raised x squared to the 3rd power. This is what it looks like. 4 times 4 times 4 times x squared times x squared times x squared. We know that 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. And whenever we multiply exponents, we add them together. So we get 6 here. So it's 64x to the 6th power would be it in simplified form. That's multiplication. Now, there's a couple things that you need to remember in multiplication when we're talking about exponents. So I'm repeating this again to remind you of it because I want you to not forget this rule. It catches everybody on the test. I've seen it several times catch people on the test. But you need to remember that if it says negative 5x in parentheses, then it reads negative 5x. But if the negative sign is on the outside of the parentheses, it reads the opposite of 5x. So when we go to simplify those, we're going to get two different answers because this is negative 5 times negative 5, which would be 25x squared because negative times a negative equals a positive, right? But on this one, we have the same thing. 5 times 5. A positive times a positive is going to equal 5, so it's 25. And x times x is going to be x squared. But it says the opposite of it. So the opposite of 25 is negative 25. You need to remember this rule. If it's in parentheses, it's negative. If it's outside the parentheses, it reads the opposite. Now let's take a look at division. The rule is not much different. It says to raise a quotient to a power, raise both the numerator, that's the top number, and the denominator, the bottom number, to the power. So let's look at an example. And I'm just going to bring in my piece of paper, which I'll tape down later. But let's look at this example, which says 4/5 to the 3rd power. So I did 4 times 4 times 4, and 5 times 5 times 5, which is 4 to the 3rd power over 5 to the 3rd power, or 4 cubed over 5 cubed. To simplify that, I would simply multiply. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64, over 5 times 5 is 25, times 5 is 125. So in simplified version, it would be 64 over 125. Now let's do a problem with a variable. So it's 2x squared to the 3rd power over 3. So I did 2 times 2 times 2, separating the terms out, and so that only like terms are together. X squared times x squared times x squared, which would be 2 times 2 times 2 would be 8, and x squared times x squared times x squared would be x to the 6th power, and then 3 times 3 times 3 would be 27. So we raise both of the numerator and the denominator to the power of 3. Stop the video right here, turn over to page 66 and do your check understanding, which is page 267, 1 through 8. All right, we're back at the look at the check understanding. And the first four are about multiplication. So remember, it told us to take each factor and raise it to the power and then simplify it. So this was 3 times 5 squared, and so it was 3 times 3 times 5 times 5. That was 9 times 25, which equaled 225. The next one was 4a to the 5th power squared, and so we did 4 times 4 and a to the 5th times a to the 5th, which gave us 4 times 4 is 16, and a to the 5th times a to the 5th is a to the 10th for 16a to the 10th power. Number 3 was 2c squared times 5, so it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which would be 32, and c squared 5 times, which would be c to the 10th power. And our final example was negative 10x cubed to the 4th power. So it was negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10. And so negative 10 times negative 10 would be 100. And 100 times negative 10 would be negative 1,000. And negative 1,000 times negative 10 would be 10,000. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3x is x to the 12th power. Now let's look at the division. Numbers 5 through 8. Let's see if we can get 6 in here. 6 is going to be hard to see, but we'll make it work. Number 5 is 2/5 squared. So on top it would be 2 times 2 for 4, and on the bottom 5 times 5 for 25. And number 6, it was negative 2/5 cubed. So negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 is negative 8. And negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 is negative 125. So it is negative 8 1/25. Number 7 was 4 over 7y squared. So 4 times 4, and then we did 7 times 7 and y times y. So the answer was 1649y squared. And in number 8, it was 3x squared over 10 to the 4th power. So 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times x squared times x squared times x squared times x squared. So it's 81x to the 8th over 10,000. Your classwork tomorrow is going to be page 267, 17 through 39 odd, and 43 through 51 all. If you have any questions about this, I know it can get confusing. You just have to remember the little rules. Now we're separating things out, but it's easy to do if you just think it through. But if you need help, I'll see you in class tomorrow.